James, thank you again. Very lively rebuttal. I have a number of questions. Some of them can be answered very quickly, I think. First, in your opening address, you said that there are only 1,500 to 2,000 viable differences among our manuscripts. Where did you get that number?
I said viable. There we go. I said viable and meaningful.
Where did you get that number?
I got that number from a number of studies by Dan Wallace that examined both the issue of viability as far as the number of manuscripts behind a reading, as well as those that actually change the meaning. He has estimated, actually I went above his number. He's estimated 1,100 to 1,400 at that point. I went above that number just simply so as to be careful.
So this is Dan Wallace's opinion?
I think Dan Wallace is an excellent scholar, and he very regularly has accurate numbers, especially in the material that he presents.
I'm just wondering how somebody knows that it's both viable and important. I mean, for example, you don't think Mark 1:41 is important, or that Hebrews 2:9 are.
I never said that, sir.
Does he think those are important?
We would both say those are important, sir.
So those
He's never said otherwise.
Those are included in the 1,500 to 2,000 number.
They would be, yes, sir.
Okay. It just seems like it's a little odd to come up with a number like that. That it's probably more guesswork than anything. But okay. You say there are 12 manuscripts written within a century of the books of the New Testament. That's news to me. What are these 12 manuscripts?
I'm not sure why it's news to you, sir. Dr. Wallace said the same thing to you at the Greer-Hurd forum as well in his opening statement. So I don't understand how that can be news. But if you would look, for example, at Philip Comfort's New Testament text and translation commentary, and again, since Dr. Wallace presented that to you.
I'm asking what the manuscripts are.
A whole list, well, I can look one up for you.
I know P52.
Yes, there are a number, of course, partly would be the issue of when we date those New Testament manuscripts.
Yes, it would.
But
that is my
for
question.
example, P32 of Titus is quite possibly that early as well. If you want an entire list, I can look it up for you here. It'll take me some time to get to it.
I think the fact that Dan Wallace says something doesn't really make it so.
I didn't say just Dan Wallace. I am reading something other than Dan Wallace in front of us here.
P32 is dated to the year 200.
Well, again, there are many people who believe that the numbers that are assigned in the back of Nestle Aland are extremely conservative.
I see.
And obviously, there are many, for example, T.C. Skeet.
Conservative would mean that they're dated later than normal or earlier. I don't understand.
Being dated not as early as they could be.
Well, yeah, you could date anything to any date you want, but the question is, what grounds do you have?
Actually, that's correct. And are you familiar with T.C. Skeet's discussion of these variants?
Yes, I do know T.C. Skeet, yes.
Okay, well, and you're aware of the fact that on a number of the papyri manuscripts listed in the Nestle Aland text, he would actually give a
Okay, let's
earlier.
talk about T.C. Skeet. When does he date P32?
Well, again, I don't believe that he addressed P32 specifically. I believe that his was a manuscript of John that I was reading about. But are you not aware of the fact
You're
that
not
there are
supposed
variations?
to be asking questions, I think.
You're correct. That's right.
So I think that this number 12 is exceedingly high and is the number 200 within 300 years. And so that's why I was just wondering.
I'm sorry, 200 with 300 years?
You said that there were 200 manuscripts.
I said 120, sir.
Oh, 120.
Yes.
That's still probably high. Let's go to this business with the Byzantine and the Alexandrian texts, which you said you weren't talking about manuscripts. You were talking about, I believe you said, printed collations. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Can you tell me what a collation is?
Well, I was using the term there to speak of the collection of the readings of a wide family of manuscripts into one representative text, such as you have in the majority text, or you had in that particular instance, the Westcott-Hort text. That's different from a collation of a specific manuscript where you take a base text and then you work through a particular manuscript, providing every variation from that base text. Historically, the TR has normally been used, but thankfully, in recent years, Codex Vaticanus has frequently been used as the base text for collation, things like that. So there's two different ways in which you can use the term.
Your latter definition is what a collation is. The other isn't a collation; it's a printed text, which is quite different. But let's talk about collations for a second. Suppose you compared a collation of a Byzantine manuscript with an Alexandrian manuscript, do you think you would get a 95% level of agreement?
Of course not. I never even intimated such a
Okay,
thing.
how high would the agreement be?
Well, again, as you pointed out in your Brill compilation, that you need to have about a 70% to assign a manuscript to a particular manuscript family. And so Byzantine texts would fall into the 50%. However, that's not the assertion I was making.
Yes, I understand your assertion, but now you're telling me that if you collate a Byzantine manuscript against an Alexandrian manuscript, there'll be a 50% agreement?
Well, I'm really surprised that you're not following what I'm saying, sir, because obviously, as you know, when you're talking about percentages of variation, you're talking about not the total words in the manuscript and their readings, you're talking about the variations. I was talking about the total words. As I displayed before the people,
Okay.
I was giving a
So
computer
let me repeat
rendering.
my question. When you collate a Byzantine and an Alexandrian manuscript, what is the level of agreement?
On variance or words, sir?
On words.
Words and variance are two different things.
I understand that,
the percentage.
because in fact, you're the one who's talking about words as being 95% in agreement. I'm asking you, if you don't collate two texts, but you collate two manuscripts, what is the level of agreement in the words?
The words would, again, a collation, the percentage of difference is in the variance, not in the total words of the manuscript, sir. And what I was
Are
presenting...
you saying that you don't know the answer?
No, sir, I think your question is comparing apples and oranges.
Okay, let me ask this. Have you ever collated a Byzantine manuscript?
A Byzantine manuscript? No, sir, I have not.
Okay, have you collated an Alexandrian manuscript?
I have worked on sections in seminary, yes, sir.
Have you collated an Alexandrian manuscript against a Byzantine manuscript?
Using the TR, if you would call that, it's not even a Byzantine manuscript. So I've never put B against a medieval minuscule, no.
Okay, well, the reason it matters is because you were making a statement about Byzantine and Alexandrian texts.
Yes, sir.
But in fact, when you compare the manuscripts with one another, this 95% agreement seems to me to be a somewhat specious number, because in fact...
Is that a question, sir?
I'm getting there.
Okay.
Isn't it a specious number?
No, sir, it's not, because you seem to refuse to allow what I presented to these people. I ask anyone in the audience, go get Bible Works, load Westcott and Hort, load the majority text, activate the module that compares them, and see for yourself.
You're comparing printed
Please
text.
allow for the
I
answer.
said that in my presentation. I
Yes,
even
okay.
stopped and said, now, these are not manuscripts, these are printed
Yes,
texts.
it's a very important distinction. I don't have a timer. How much time do we have?
12 minutes.
12 minutes. Oh, very good. Okay, let's see. So, where do we want to go from there? Let's talk about your main point, which seems to be that the original text is preserved somewhere in the manuscript tradition. That we have all these variants, and that in every case, one of the variants is the original text. Is that your understanding?
Yes, I believe in the tenacity of the text, that when we have a variant, the reason that we can invest the time in looking into it is that one of the readings that is there is the original reading. I don't believe we need to engage in conjectural emendation, just simply to fill in gaps as we do with most classical works.
Okay, and why do you think this?
Because that seems to be the conclusion of not only Kurt Ahland, and an extensive discussion of that. I cited it in my opening statement. But that also seems to have been the belief of a large majority of the textual critical scholars down through the ages, from Tischendorf onwards. Moises Silva, Dan Wallace, and others have also enunciated the exact same things.
So it's because authorities have told you this.
Well, and I also find it to be very consistent with my own study of the textual variations in the New Testament.
Okay. Would you agree that Eldon Epp is probably the dean of text criticism in America today?
Well, I think Eldon Epp, yourself, and D.C. Parker are probably the biggest names right now. Unfortunately, I would say that the perspective that you are now pursuing, and as you yourself have said for the past 10 or 15 years, you've pretty much given up on working on the original text. That sort of's been done.
So, okay, so Epp in America, and Parker, he's English, and maybe Keith Elliott in England is a big name. How about in Germany? Who would be the authorities now living?
With the Allens out of the picture.
Well, Barbara's still living.
I'm sorry?
Barbara's still living.
Yeah, but I don't think she's publishing, right? She's retired from the Institute, so.
Maybe Klaus Wachtel or Gerd Mink or...
Yes, well, I'm sorry, I don't keep up with German textual criticism today.
How about in France?
I don't know anybody in France, sir.
Probably Christian Bernard Amphoux. These are the biggest names in the field. Epp, Parker, Elliott, Alland, Wachtel, Mink, Amphoux. So far as I know, none of them agree with you on this particular point about the preservation of the text.
Alland doesn't, even though it's in the book.
Who wrote that book?
Kurt and Barbara Alland.
Yeah, Kurt. I don't know about Barbara Alland, but what do you think about the movement that Parker is especially driving, which states that, in fact, it no longer makes sense to talk about the original text?
I think it is an abandonment of, I agree with Moises Silva's comments. You're familiar with those?
Oh, yeah.
I agree with Moises Silva's comments in response to specifically D.C. Parker. Would you like me to read what he says, or just is that since you know it so well?
We got some time to kill. Go ahead. Sure.
Actually, he says, nor do I find it helpful when David Parker, for example, sanctifies his proposals by a theological appeal to divinely inspired textual diversity, indeed textual confusion and contradiction, that is supposed to be of greater spiritual value than apostolic authority. Actually, his primary exhibit that he gives in response to that is your book, Orthodox Corruption of Scripture, where he says you cannot read a page. He says there is hardly a page in that book that does not in fact mention such a text or assume its accessibility, that is, the original. I'm not sure if you've changed your viewpoint since 1993, but Moises Silva certainly would seem to feel that if you now agree with Parker that you have.
Yeah, I have changed my view a little bit, but my question is really about Parker. Why is it that David Parker thinks we can't get back to the original text?
Well, there are a number of reasons, theological and genealogical. Obviously, I have focused on his theological reason in that he asserts that we have made an artificial distinction between text and tradition, which I certainly would strongly disagree with. But as you yourself have said, as far as the current state of the manuscript tradition is concerned, we're as far back as we can get. I think the term that you used in an SBL article a few years ago was we're just tinkering as far as that is concerned. And so apart from some major find, a Dead Sea Scrolls level New Testament type of find, there seems to be a fair amount of skepticism at being able to get any farther back.
Yeah, I agree with that. Could you tell me when I've got like a minute and a half left?
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, let's approach this from a different angle. This business with P75 to B, a lot of people have used this, and I mean, let me say, I know you keep saying I don't understand things, but, the reality is I understand them. I don't buy them. And so let me ask you about this P75 to B. P75, say it was copied in the year 175, and say B was copied in the year 350, and that 350 is not a copy of P75, but it's very close to P75. That's an argument for showing that there was a consistent line of tradition, at least in that Alexandrian, Proto-Alexandrian line, right?
All right.
What does that, so the fact that somebody in the middle of the 4th century accurately copies a text, what does that tell you about somebody copying a text in the year 70?
A number of things. What I was attempting to explain, and you may consider it bogus and dismiss it, it doesn't change the fact that what I was attempting to present was this issue of multifocality and the multiple lines of transmission. That these two manuscripts are probably closer together than any other two manuscripts from that time period in their readings, and yet they are not in the same specific line of transmission.
Oh no, that's incorrect. They're both Proto-Alexandrian manuscripts, aren't they?
As I put on the screen, sir, what I meant by that was P75 is not the direct ancestor.
No, but they're
of
still
B.
in the same line of, they're so much in the same line of tradition that they're cousins virtually, aren't they?
Okay, I'm attempting to answer, but you're just arguing with my answer.
But
I'm not.
you're not seriously going to contend that P75 and B are not in the same line of tradition, are you?
I obviously defined the term line there as direct lineal genealogical ancestor, which I did in my opening statement as well. What I'm saying is, while they're both clearly Proto-Alexandrian manuscripts, they are in the same stream. They represent two different lines within that stream because Vaticanus contains readings that are older than P75.
Okay, let me ask this. How many genealogical lineal manuscripts do we have related to one another?
I don't even understand the
Well,
question.
you just said that they're not in a lineal genealogical line with each other. In other words, one is not a copy of another.
Exactly. P75.
How many copies of other manuscripts do we actually have?
All I said, sir, is that P75 is not what was copied to make Vaticanus. I don't have any other way of expressing the statement that there was one.
Question. I'm asking how many copies of manuscripts do we have? In other words, where we have the original and the copy.
You mean where we absolutely know which one was copied from which?
You're saying B is not a copy of P75.
Because it contains different, more ancient readings, yes.
Yes, I got that. So, but I'm wondering if that's usual or unusual. Do we have copies of manuscripts in the tradition?
We don't have, the only thing I can think of you're asking is something like 1739 where we know something about the nature and the origination of what it is a copy of, or even Beze or something like that. But very rarely do we know the exact lineal parent of any manuscript in the first 1,000 years.
Exactly. I mean, so the fact that one isn't the copy of the other is in fact completely normal, right? Because we don't have copies.
Yes, sir.
But they are so closely related that they're in the same line of tradition, yes?
Of course, yes, sir.
Okay, good. What then does the fact that B is close to P75 but not a copy of P75, B copied in the year 350, say, what does that tell us about copying practices in the year 70?
I said what it does is demonstrate that the onus is upon the skeptic to assert that there is corruption in the primitive period, because since we have multiple lines coming out of the early period, and yet it's the same New Testament, that if there was some kind of primitive corruption, you would have multiple corrupted lines coming out that vary massively from one another, and that is not the case.
Excellent. Oh, that's not the case.
No,
so you said in seminary you did some collations of early manuscripts. Tell me, how do the early manuscripts stack up against each other in comparison with the later manuscripts?
Well, as I've said in my published works, the vast majority of meaningful and viable variants take place within the first 250, 300 years of the transmission history of the New Testament. That's a given.
Yeah, let me reword it. If you compare two Byzantine late manuscripts to one another,
of course,
will they agree a lot or not very often?
Well, of course. So the variations between a 14th century Byzantine minuscules are almost totally based upon scribes falling asleep or slapping a bug while they're writing.
What about the early manuscripts?
The early manuscripts, because, as I said in my opening presentation, they're being done in a very different period of time where very rarely did Christians have access to scriptoriums or things like that. Because of persecution taking place, the destruction of text and things like that, there is a much wider variation between them.
So the earlier the manuscript, the more differences there are between them.
As P72 demonstrates, these men were not, by and large, well, P75 is different, but P72, P66, these were not professional scribes.
1 minute.
I'm sorry?
Okay, so let me just say something. The point is that the earlier you go, the more different they are. So you just extrapolate that the earliest were probably the most different. Let me ask about P72, where you resonate with this particular text, you said, that has 2 Peter and Jude in it. What other documents are found in P72?
There are some non-canonical documents in P72. My recollection was that 1st, 2nd Peter, and Jude were the only canonical documents in it.
Right. So I'm just wondering about your resonating with this document. I mean, do you think the scribe thought that what he was copying was Scripture?
Well, I don't think that you can simply jump to the conclusion that because scribes included books in a single codex, that meant that they believed that everything in that codex was necessarily scripture. There are all sorts of works that were considered to be very beneficial for the reading of people that were included in codices that were not necessarily canonical.
Yeah, I just thought that was odd that that particular manuscript is one that you resonate with because it's the earliest attestation we have of the Protevangelium Jacobi.
Time?
Okay, good. Thank you.